Hi everybody, welcome back to the Hungry Gardener. In 2024, I have intentionally stepped away from content creation. I stepped off of social media a few years ago and then stepped into YouTube about a year after that. But I intentionally took this year off to step away from the content creation and the daily grind of going through setting up and trying to find content. I wanted to focus this year on actually learning and focusing more on things that I need to learn to be able to move forward in the next year. And so what I want to do is I want to tell you the 3 things that I learned this year that have impacted my life here on the farm and impacted my life going forward. The first lesson I learned is about chickens. I learned a lot about chickens this year. We've had chickens for about a year, 2 years now, but this year is where I really learned a lot because some of our chickens got sick, some of our chickens had to be put down, and so I learned a lot through this. The main thing that I took away from this was bumblefoot. I didn't realize how extreme that could be, and so during the summer, one of our chickens got an extreme case of bumblefoot. I had been checking their feet every once in a while just to make sure that they were not getting sick, and then I stepped off from that for a little while, and this is when that happened. I think she stepped on a piece of glass, or we have a lot of thorns in our chicken area, so maybe it was that. I'm not sure exactly what, but from that she got a case of bumblefoot. And when I was looking through how to take care of that, I came up with a lot of different methods, found a lot of different remedies for that. Most of them being kind of an extreme, it takes a lot of effort to do that. And so one of those was soaking in a salt bath and then putting some cream on the foot, then bandaging it, doing that once a day for many weeks. For me, I didn't see the time investment of that, not even to mention the financial impact of that. I didn't find it worth it. And so I was debating what else to do. And so at one point, she was just getting so fat. She wasn't able to move around. She wasn't able to really do much. She was hobbling along, and so it was kind of depressing. And so at one point I dug a hole to take care of her. And after I dug the hole, I spoke with my wife again, and we decided to just give her one more shot. And so what I decided to do was just do a salt bath every day in the morning for 20 minutes for a couple weeks, and just to see what that would do. Would it happen? Would this help? And after about a week of this, I did begin to see the swelling in the foot going down. I started to see a bit of healing, so I continued to that for a few weeks, and now she's fat and happy. She did lose a lot of the weight that she had gained from not being able to move around, but now it's winter, obviously, and so she's gained all of that fat back, and she's now a plump chicken and fat and happy. So that worked very well. The whole went to it served a different purpose eventually. And so I'm very happy about that. I'm happy that I learned that you shouldn't stop at the first thing that you find. Even if it's expensive, if it's too much time, keep searching. You may be able to find a different remedy. So don't give up. Don't give in to just calling it quits on a chicken specifically in this case, but just in general. Don't give up on pushing forward on the remedy. The second thing I want to talk about is the climate and the zone changes over the last few years. I've lived here for 7 years, so the opinions, the facts that I'm going to present are simply from what I have observed over the last 7 years. And so I'm not in any way a climate activist. I'm not a climate change advocate. I am simply someone who is just observing the climate and the zone in a gardening perspective, not in a global warming perspective. So take that as you will. These are my observations over the last 7 years. With that, I have been living here for 7 years. Before I moved here, I heard stories of snowstorms that would bring 1 to 2 meters of snow, which is like 3 to 6 feet of snow at one time. People would be snowed in for weeks. The Duna, the Danube that is here, would freeze over completely. I've seen photos of that, so it has happened in the past. But since I've moved here, this has not happened once. I was very excited to see a frozen over Danube, but it just hasn't happened. Like the Danube not happening, I've not seen that amount of snow in my time here. I've lived here for 7 years. I've already said that, but I just wanted to reiterate the fact that I've only observed this with my own eyes for the last 7 years. The last 4 years of this, I've been gardening or researching gardening in some perspective. So this is where I've really started to do my own research into the climate, what it is now and what it has been in the past and what it is projected to do in the future. So with that, I have noticed over the last 4 years that the summers specifically have changed quite drastically. A typical Hungarian summer, even before I moved here, when I was just coming here on tour with my band, I would notice that during the summer, when you're at the Balaton, our big lake here, you would go there for a week, you would spend time in the water in the morning, you would then see a storm rolling through. This would last an hour or two, and then it would go on, you would get back in the water. This would bring a lot of summer rain. This was amazing. This would happen all the time, at least once, maybe twice a week. It was a common occurrence. So that would help us during the summer months. This has not happened, as far as I can tell, in the last 2 or 3 years. There have been some summer storms, but not to the extent that they used to be rolling through the country. Last year specifically, this last summer was very harsh. I know around the globe, everybody was struggling with some droughts. Some places were being overly flooded. It was insane. But here in Hungary, we experienced a very, very dry summer. Now, going into this summer, I kind of expected it. I kind of felt it. I don't know if it was in my bones, if I had just read enough to be able to expect kind of a dry summer. And so going into this summer, I had a rainwater catchment system that totaled around 1,100 liters. I don't know whether that is in gallons right off the bat, but I had about 1,100 liters going into the summer. So I knew that was going to sustain me for at least, I don't know, a month, being very conservative with the way I'm watering. So going into that, I was able to keep our plants watered fairly well. But after that ran out, we really struggled to keep water on any of our plants because it was just not raining. There was no moisture coming in. And so there was no rainwater being captured. There was no water in the air. There were a few days where it kind of was a little muggy, and so that was a little helpful, but it wasn't enough to actually make a difference in the watering. And so we do have a well here. It is not deep. It has, the only way to get to this water is by hand. So we put a bucket down on a rope, and it would be a few liters at a time. It wasn't anything sustainable. We could do it in a pinch, but it took a lot of time. And so all in all, we weren't able to water our garden consistently enough to where our plants would be sustained. So ultimately, most of our plants died in the summer, and only about halfway through the summer, we were able to get a pump, an electric pump for our well. And so after we got the water tested and we confirmed that it was safe for plants, we were then able to consistently water our plants. And after that, our plants took off. Our tomatoes came back with full vigor, and a lot of our plants and our grass even was able to recover from this. And we've been able to sustain that up until it started raining again. So that was good, but it just goes to show that the extreme environment that we're in now is going to take a lot more intense. What is the word? I can't think of the English word. Intentionality. We're going to have to be a lot more intentional with our watering going forward next year. And that's one of the lessons that I learned, is being able to predict. You can't really predict the climate in general, but being able to kind of look at the past and trying to look at what the environment might do. This is something that we need to, but I need to more specifically be intentional with. On that note, the kind of secondary lesson that I learned from that is, and I completely forgot. I remembered. So these zones. So right now I am in zone 7B. Hungary in general is a zone 7. We have the A and the B somewhere dotted about. So we are in zone 7B. However, I do know that the U.S. kind of refined their zoning, their planting zones, to be more specific. So it's a lot more accurate now than it was. And I think that would be very helpful to do here in Europe. But aside from that, I've been doing a lot of research, a lot of talking to people who have gardened here for a long time, who have been part of the environment for a long time, and they are kind of predicting and thinking that the environment is, the zoning is slightly warmer. It's going to become slightly warmer than the current zone. And so what I've done to kind of adapt to that, and not necessarily for my benefit, but for my children's benefit, is to research and find fruit trees specifically, that are zoned up. So things that are a little bit more Mediterranean, because people are talking about Hungary becoming more Mediterranean in its environment, similar to the way that Croatia is, which is I believe zone 8. So it's not an extreme difference, but it is a difference. And so people are kind of talking about how Hungary might move its way into that zone. So to adapt to that, I'm trying to find trees. I just planted a persimmon tree a few weeks ago. And so that is one of the signs that, or one of the things that I'm doing to kind of adapt to the future of the zone. Now, if Hungary doesn't end up moving up a zone to 8 or 9, then what have I lost? I've lost a tree or two. But if it does move up and the environment, the zone changes, we become a little bit more, I don't want to say tropical, but a little bit more warm and humid, then I've prepared for the future for that. So take that as you will. I don't want to encourage things that are going to necessarily put you out of your way to try to adapt to that. But for me, if the zone doesn't change, what have I wasted? I've wasted a few thousand forints for a tree and, I don't know, 50 square centimeters of land for the next few years. That, for me, is totally worth the sacrifice. So with that, I've learned a lot of lessons about the climate. Hopefully next year, I'm going to be able to adapt even better to the climate and the zone that I am currently in. And the third lesson is very closely related to the last one. It is the watering. And I've already talked about it kind of I've already talked about it a little bit, but I want to be a little bit more intentional with the watering structure. So I've been working this year on getting more rainwater catchment. So on top of the 1,100 liters that I had this summer, I've also invested in 2 IBC totes and connected them directly to our house. So now we have over 3,000 liters of rainwater. All of our buckets are currently full because we had a lot of snow, we had a lot of rain in the fall. So they are bursting at the seams at the moment, which is good. And so going into this next summer, this next growing season, I want to be a lot more intentional with how I'm watering, not just how much I'm watering, but the style, the method in which I'm going to be watering. I want to implement not just a lot of the hose on the surface and deep watering, but also trying to get water deep into the soil. So I want to be intentional with not allowing the soil to dry out. So before it starts getting really hot, I want to start watering already and just keep that soil moist, keep it just drenched. So all of our trees especially can just drill down and get the water they need. And with that, I also want to employ a lot of the different methods that I've seen online. Like the clay pot, I can't remember what it's called, the clay pot in the soil. I really want to invest in trying to get that functional. I know it's a lot more specific. So when you're doing that, I've learned recently that it's a good method, but you have to do it very close together. So the root balls, it's only like, 10 centimeters around where it's at that is truly soaked. So you have to be, if you have, say, a 1 meter bed, every 10, 15 centimeters, you want to have one of those so that the soil is able to gather all of that up. That's something that I've learned recently because I did employ that a little bit. I've got these little terracotta spikes that you can put a wine bottle in. I got them off of Temu, and they did all right. You have to be consistent with watering with those, but I think I'll probably venture into something a little bit different than that next year. I will still use those, obviously, because I don't want to just chuck them out, but the watering, I definitely need to be more consistent with that. I need to be more intentional with when I water. I worked on a golf course growing many years ago, so I know the methods of deep watering. I know the methods of when to water. So at night, not necessarily is not necessarily the best, but more very early morning before the heat comes is the best time to water, because then it soaks in and whatever is left, say on the leaves or whatever, that can evaporate quickly and you prevent any disease coming from that. During the day, you only want to water, like basically spot water, in extreme cases. Otherwise, you're wasting a good amount of that water to evaporation. And then at night, after the sun has gone down, if you're doing deep watering on the ground, not just spraying over all of the leaves, then that works as well. That's something that I've learned this year. The deep water method works best. Obviously, you soak everything and then you just leave it. And with that, those are my 3 lessons. Those are my 3 lessons that I've taken away from this year. Going forward, obviously, I want to learn as much as I can about Hungary and its climate and how it's going to be changing, and changing for the better or for the worse, doesn't matter. I need to adapt to that and learn going forward. So thank you very much for just sitting with me and listening to me rant and talk about gardening here in Hungary. And I hope that you enjoy this kind of content. If you like it, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and if you want to subscribe. I'm going to be trying to do a little bit more content creation in 2025 to be able to just give you a look at my day in the life of a Hungry gardener. So with that, best wishes from Hungary and Happy New Year. I will see you in 2025.